Wow, take a look at this. Now that is some nasty wear. I'm going to strip off the wheels and bring the diff into the workshop so I can better assess the problem. Righto, it's evident that the knuckle where the hub rotates on the diff for steering is damaged. So I'm going to start by removing the hub and see exactly what needs repairing. I just need to remove the two knuckle caps and the hub portion will come right off. Now let's take a closer look at the diff. Both of the holes are bone dry and damaged, but fortunately they still have their bearing cups. And the two caps, they aren't too bad, they still have their bearing cones. So I've located and assessed the damaged parts. I've got a solution. But before I begin the repair, I need to strip down the diff to make it lighter so it's easier to work with. Just as well, look at the condition of the bearings on the other side. This bearing actually broke inside. Good thing I opened this side, I can replace these bearings now. Okay, off with this hub portion. Next was to remove the center portion. Alright, so that's all the mechanical components out the diff. I'm left with just the shell. Next, I want to remove all the bearing cups out of the diff. I do this by welding the inside of the bearing cup. The welding pulls and helps separate the cup from the bearing journal. Next, I use some material laying in the workshop to make a sliding hammer. First cup out, I repeated the process for the other three. I'm actually really glad these bearing cups are still seated tightly in the damaged portion of the diff. With the cup still seated tightly, it means that the bearing journal on the diff did not take any damage. And that's all the cups out. The side of the diff is not damaged, so I made a sketch of it to use as reference when I repair the other side. It's almost completely worn through over here. And as you can see over here, the bearing journal did not take any damage. The only portion that's actually damaged is where the seal sits. And it's the same thing on this side, but I must say this face did wear down a bit more though. Okay, the ultimate question, can this be repaired? Of course it can, anything can be repaired. I'm tacking the diff to my work table because I want to attach the line bore to it. I knocked out this piece that was just holding on. I plan on putting the boring bar through the centers of the bearing journals, but this wall was in my way. It is cast iron, I thought I could break it out, but damn, it's almost 10 mils thick. So my plan is to burn a hole out for the boring bar. You can cut cast iron with a cutting torch, but doesn't cut as easy as normal steel. Righto, that's done. I want to make two nylon liners that fit in the bearing journals and a boring bar. I'm making this boring bar because the one I have is just so long. I will definitely be using this boring bar again in the future, so it's worth it to invest some time in making this one. Okay, now for the nylon liners. This is a liner I used from a previous job. So its inside diameter is fine. I'm just going to machine the outside diameter to the same diameter as the bearing cups. I have enough width here to get two liners from this one. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, just bear with me. You'll soon understand. Okay, back to the diff now. As I mentioned, the outside diameter is now the same as the bearing cups. So they fit firmly into the bearing journals. So now, if I slide my new boring bar through the nylon liners, it will be positioned on the same axis as the bearings and seals for this damaged portion. If you have a closer look here, you can see this face is worn down quite bad. This side's face isn't too bad, just its inside is damaged. Okay, back to the setup. The boring bar is positioned correctly. Now I can add the bearings and secure them to the diff for the line boring machine. Usually I would use a MIG welder to secure all the bearings, but I'm going to bring out the stick welder because the diff is cast iron. When welding mild steel to cast iron, I always use the arc welder with a stainless steel electrode. Alright, all the bearings are now secure. I can now mount the line boring machine. I cannot start boring though. I need to drill some holes in the new boring bar for my cutting tool. I'm making this boring bar from induction hardened chrome shaft. It is extremely hard. That's why I'm heating it up with the torch to anneal the steel. else there's no way I'm going to get my standard high-speed steel drill bit through it. I must admit I hate moving away from my actual repair all the time to make tools. But hey, it will make my life a lot easier in the future, so I suppose it's worth it. Okay, that's out the way. Back to the repair now. New boring bar, not looking too shabby. I just need to remove the two nylon liners and I can start the line boring. And this is how the final setup looked. As mentioned before, the bearing journal is not damaged, so I'm only boring to the depth of the seal journal. This side's face has worn down quite bad, so it does look like I've barely bored anything. Alright, for this side. I'm just boring this hole that is true all the way around, so I can make a cap to weld it closed. I know there's going to be people saying it was so unnecessary to make this hole in the diff, but it needed to be done for the way I'm doing this repair. If you had another plan to do this repair, let me know in the comments. I'm interested to hear. And that's this hole complete. Now for the final side. Again, I just need to bore to the depth of the seal journal. And voila, that's all the boring complete. I can now remove the boring machine, pull out my new boring bar, and remove all the bearings. Okay, let's have a closer look now. I've cut here for a sleeve for the seal. The bearing journal's fine. This side I'm putting a cap. This bearing journal's fine. And over here I'm putting a sleeve. I machined a little extra on this face to try get it level for my welding. So I took all the measurements I need, made some sketches, and at the end of the repair I want to see if my side measures the same as the other side. And to the lathe we go. Firstly, I'm machining the two sleeves that are going to house the seals. If you're enjoying this video, give it a like and a share. Making these videos take a lot of my personal time, so showing your support will be much appreciated. And that's the two sleeves complete. Next, I'm going to machine the two caps to close off the holes. And that's the first cap. And the second one complete. And there we have it, the two sleeves for the seals and the two caps. It's time to fit. I'm just giving this side a little chamfer for welding. Now I'm going to heat shrink the sleeve in. Once the hole has expanded larger than the sleeve, I drop it in. I repeated the process for the cap. It's now time to weld them in. If you're wondering what the spray is, it's not deodorant. It's just anti-splatter to avoid splatter from sticking to the bearing and seal journal. As I mentioned before, I use the arc welder to weld mild steel to cast iron. I'm honestly not very good at welding arc, but these stainless steel electrodes really weld very nice. It makes it look like I know what I'm doing. If you want to know what welding electrode I'm using, there we go. Take a screenshot. And that's the first sleeve complete. Now to weld in the first cap. Note how I welded straight after I heat shrunk the cap and sleeve. I did this because you need to preheat cast iron before welding. While the diff was still in this position, I grounded and shaped it to make it look more original. It didn't come out too shabby. Now let's do the other side. The diff was still quite hot, so I just tapped this cap in. And the same for this sleeve, even though this one never went deep in. Yeah, you can see just how much the face had actually worn down. And again, some anti-splatter, and then the welding. The cap complete. And now for the last bit of welding on this sleeve. This side I had to weld up a bit more so I could sort of blend the repair. Obviously I won't hide it 100%, but I always try to keep my work neat. And that's the repair work complete. I just need to fit new bushings, seals and bearings to the diff. I made different jigs so I could knock everything in without causing any damage. And that's the bushings and seals for the side shafts in. Bushings and seals where the diff mounts on the chassis in. Next up, new bushings and seals for the hub portion. and they are all in. Before I fit the new seals and bearings on the side I repaired, let's check my measurements. 244, the same as I measured on the other side. All was good, so I fitted the new bearings and seals for the knuckles. And they are all in. I now need to fit all the mechanical working parts back in the diff. These hubs are a bit heavy, so I got my man James to give me a hand so I didn't damage the seals. We shimmed up this side and everything was perfect. Now for the other side. This is the side I repaired. Let's see if it's gonna be a balls up. And here we go. Everything is looking good. I'm satisfied with this outcome. Don't forget to let me know in the comments what you think about this. Last but not least, let's fit the steering cylinder and fit the diff to the TLB. Alright, the diff is in and everything is working perfectly. Thanks for watching guys. Check you in the next one.